Welcome back to another episode of I Paid an Artist to Turn a Star Wars ship into a Star Trek ship. Yes, we finally did the Venator. So this is something I've done a couple times already with an artist friend of mine, ISS Aventine, or on Blue Sky they go by NCC 60205. Aventine, your branding's all over the place. Please, it's really getting difficult to know how to what to call you. I'm sorry. Yeah, Aventine is a fantastic artist. They're on Blue Sky. You should definitely go follow them to see more of their art. But they are an artist that I have worked with before in the past to commission other ships, both Star Trek, Star Wars mashups like this. We did the N1 Naboo fighter and the Y-wing previously, and I also had Aventine do a Star Trek Online era version of the California class, which I have shown off in previous videos. But today we're going back to the Star Trek Star Wars mashups because we finally figured out how to do the Venator, which I am very excited about. The Venator is it's a favorite of mine from Star Wars because, like, starfighters are one thing. Starfighters are always cool. Which my favorite starfighter from Star Wars is the N1, which is why it was like one of the first ones I had turned into a Star Trek ship. But in terms of like actual massive starships, I freaking love the Venator. It's such a cool looking ship, and I am absolutely one of the people who will say like the Venator is cooler than an ISD. Fight me on it. I don't care. But unlike the N1 and the Y-wing, this one was quite a bit different challenge in order to make it into a Starfleet ship, because with the N1 and the Y-wing, they both have those big engine pods which were easily swappable for warp nacelles. Obviously, the Venator doesn't have that sort of setup. It has a very traditional Star Wars like setup, being a big triangle, very classic big massive Star Destroyer setup like that. So turning this into a Starfleet ship was a bit more of a challenge, but I feel like Aventine really pulled it off. So if you're familiar with some ships from Star Trek Online, you can probably see some of the inspirations for the conversion into a Starfleet ship for the Venator here. First off, the shape is clearly very reminiscent of the Hydra class from Star Trek Online, which, if you're unfamiliar with the Hydra, it is meant to be a 25th century variant of the Prometheus class from Star Trek Voyager. Technically, Star Trek Online has two variants of the Prometheus for the 25th century. It's got the Hestia class, which was the original one, but the Hydra was brought in as a sort of mirror universe counterpart to it. But there is still a Prime Universe version as well, so we were sticking with the Prime Universe version here. I didn't want to get into the whole mirror universe thing with all this thing, so we're sticking with Prime Universe. Originally, I was thinking about having this be more based off of Prometheus's shape, because Prometheus is kind of known for being the triangular shaped saucer, which is very reminiscent of the sort of Star Destroyer like design style from Star Wars. But Aventine's the one that suggested going with the Hydra instead. I wasn't really thinking about the Hydra. Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of the look of the Hydra, but its basic shape complemented this really well. They were absolutely spot on with going with this direction instead, because the somewhat sharper lines and the harder angles on the Hydra here, I feel like really complemented the Star Destroyer look here too, while still doing a good job of making it look like a Starfleet ship as well, because it was already based off of a Starfleet ship. Thank you, Hydra. Another big inspiration for this ship was the Kitty Hawk class, also from Star Trek Online. The Kitty Hawk is meant to be a Picard era version of the Ark Royal class carrier, which is not its original name. The Ark Royal is actually the Ranger class from Star Trek Starfleet Command 2, which Star Trek Online later brought over and had to rename it because they already had a Ranger class. But yeah, this was basically this whole like control tower here thing is taken right off of the Kitty Hawk. Which, fun fact, it was actually originally inspired by the Venator, because the Venator's bridge, and also its control towers, are these two sections up here. And we figured this was kind of like a key portion for the Venator, and I wanted to have that transfer over to the Star Trek Venator. And fortunately, the Kitty Hawk kind of did a great job of already helping in that direction. So why not just take that, put it on here? Some modifications were made, mainly that we put the bridge up here. This was something that was a little bit of a challenge. Originally, Aventine wanted to put the bridge more closer to the front of the saucer, but I wanted it more in a typical spot that you would see on a normal Starfleet ship. So I thought about up here, but then I felt that this was going to be more of like a control bay for this long like hangar / runway area thing. So I didn't feel like it didn't make much sense, in my opinion, to put the bridge up here. So eventually we decided just put it on the control towers, because that's where The Star Wars Venator, that's where the bridge is on there. So we figured just put the bridge and the hangar control towers up in the same pod. Also, based off of the Kitty Hawk, the this aft shuttle bay slash hangar bay, this was also kind of inspired by the Kitty Hawk, but ended up being a little bit more based off of the Hydra's version. So I mean, it works either way. But yeah, I wanted to have a big honking shuttle bay in the back too. I'm not really sure what, because like clearly the fighters would go out through this side and through these side areas down here. So this could just be more for traditional shuttle launches, or possibly it could be like a through carrier. Not sure if that would totally work with this, but you know, I like the thought. Like I said, it's still very like, you know, up in the air. We were just kind of just going to get the look down for all this too. There hasn't been much thought on the total inner workings of the ship, but I do like the idea of it being like a through carrier. That would be kind of cool. These pylons, they're not really pylons. It's really just like a big chunk of wing for the ship that's attached to the warp nacelles. The warp nacelles being very reminiscent of Hydra's warp nacelles, but these were kind of based off of the Kitty Hawk's pylons, but we just kind of filled in the gap to make it a bit more reminiscent of these wing sections on the original Venator. So I feel like that made a good job of keeping the Venator's basic shape and then just adding some warp nacelles to it. I felt like that was a good way to go with the ship, because obviously it didn't have any big engine pods that are similar to warp nacelles like on the N1 or the Y wing. So we kind of just had to put that there, because obviously, you know, when turning something into a Starfleet ship, you got to have the key Starfleet aesthetic options too, and big honking warp nacelles is kind of a must for a Starfleet ship, at least in most cases. There are some exceptions here, but I wanted to really capture that classic Starfleet profile. And you probably already noticed these side hangers here along the side of the saucer section. Those that is clearly meant to be reminiscent of the Jupiter carrier, and that's kind of how the inspiration for this thing started. Is that just because I don't like the Jupiter? I've never been a fan of its look, and I would love to have the option to have a better looking carrier, which, you know, Ark Royal came along and did a really good job of that. But I would love to see something like this in Star Trek Online as a playable carrier that just looks really cool, looks really contemporary to Star Trek Online's timeline. That also looks like a more typical Starfleet design while still being its own thing. Well, obviously this really isn't its own thing, because, you know, it started as this thing. But I don't know, it has such a striking design style in comparison to the Jupiter, I think, because I don't know, I've never been a fan of the Jupiter. It looks like a bloated Battlestar Galactica having an identity crisis. I like this better, which is sharp angular Venator having an identity crisis instead. Now, obviously, this is meant to be a type of carrier, and that's because I wanted this to be a carrier because, I mean, you often see the Venator being used as a carrier throughout Star Wars, particularly in the Clone Wars. It's constantly deploying fighters and, you know, housing various auxiliary craft. Was very much functioned. It was very much used like a carrier, despite being a Star Destroyer. And with that in mind, I kind of wanted this to still be a carrier, but if this were to be in Star Trek Online, like if I were to make like actual stats for this thing, I would probably build it as a dreadnought carrier, just to kind of acknowledge both the fact that it's, you know, it's a big honking ship. Like, we scaled this thing to be similar in size to the Jupiter class, but we didn't want to go full same size as the Venator class, just because the original Venator, because at that point it would be bigger than an Odyssey. We didn't want to go that crazy with it. So this was meant to be kind of in scale with the Jupiter, which is already a pretty big ship. So it's meant to be a pretty decent sized carrier, but at the same time, I wanted it to be a dreadnought carrier just to acknowledge the sort of Star Destroyer of it all. These are still meant to be powerful warships for the Republic in Star Wars. So I wanted that to be kind of represented here too, which is why we got these big honking phaser arrays along the saucer section as well. Well, that, and because obviously I can't put ion cannons along the side here. We really wouldn't fit the Star Trek aesthetic at all. I really love how Aventine was able to put a bunch of fighters, like make sure they're like visible on the ship too. We got this big runway section with a bunch of different fighters on here, and, you know, the Jupiter inspired open hangar bay along the side as well. So we can see a bunch of Valkyries along here, a Callisto light escort. That's what this is over here, as well as my own Phantom class fighter, which was the one that we did together. That was based off of the Naboo fighter from Star Wars. So I wanted to make sure that was represented in here as well as one little Peregrine having a pretty bad day. Obviously, you can't see it at this angle, but for the main deflector, I envisioned this thing having a exposed style main deflector similar to that on the Baran class, because I feel like that would be a nice complement to the instead of having the open hangar bay on the bottom of the ship, like on the actual Venator. I didn't think like the bottom hangar bay like on that would make sense in this case. So I feel like just outright replacing that with the exposed main deflector on the Baran is a decent compromise there to maintain the more traditional Starfleet aesthetic, because obviously it would need a main deflector. But also by keeping it open like that is a little bit of an acknowledgement to that original open hangar bay on the original design. Now, for the name of this ship, I got kind of lazy. I just called it Venator again. And that's largely because, well, fun fact, Venator means hunter in Latin. And I kind of like the idea of it being called just a hunter class, but I didn't feel like it fit that well for like a Starfleet ship. Calling it hunter, it felt a little too aggressive, but Venator, making it a Latin name feels a little pretentious enough to be a Starfleet ship. Originally, I had thought about naming it after the carrier that stood in for the aircraft carrier USS Enterprise in Star Trek 4, but that was USS Ranger. And as we've discussed, Ranger has already kind of been used as a name. I did think about trying to figure out a Latin translation for Ranger, but there really is no direct equivalent for Ranger in Latin. But you know what comes close? Hunter, which is Venator. So I stuck with Venator for the name. Some earlier work in progress stuff that Aventine had sent me along the way while we were working on this. This was the first draft that they had sent me. Here you can see this is where the bridge was originally thought to be. Aventine was also thinking about putting the deflector down here too, but I wanted it more in a typical like Starfleet location, which coincidentally would be kind of where that lower hangar on the Venator, the original Venator, would be, which is why I kind of went with that, the thought of the Baran style deflector, which unfortunately can't really be seen in this, but I know it's there, so now you know it's there. But yeah, everything else kind of remained mostly the same throughout the rest of this, though. I did want them to make this one big phaser array instead of two smaller ones. That's always something that's always been like a pet peeve for me, splitting up phasers when they don't necessarily need to be split up. So I wanted to make sure that remained as one long phaser strip along each side of the saucer section. But yeah, even from the get-go, a lot of this kind of kept its original shape of being like this, largely based off of the Star Trek Online's Hydra class, with bits of the Kitty Hawk and the Jupiter as well. So yeah, that's kind of how it started. This was the revised draft that they sent me here, which moved the bridge up here to around the control towers, then replaced that with a sort of a secondary deflector down here by the front of the ship, which is something often seen on something like the Intrepid, and even Hydra itself has a secondary deflector along the saucer section. Following here, Aventine moved on to the final line art, which is incredibly crisp and smooth right here, which they went on to color in, and then you saw the final product later. So yeah, that is the Venator Star Destroyer reimagined as a Star Trek ship, or I guess more specifically a Star Trek Online ship, because we went with the hull material that's very reminiscent of the Odyssey's hull material and every Starfleet ship that was used as inspiration for this ship. So the Hydra, the Kitty Hawk, the Jupiter, and even the deflector, which you can't see here, would have been from the Baran, all of which are Star Trek Online ships. So yeah, Venator reimagined as a Star Trek Online ship. I'm still a little surprised we actually managed to pull this off, because I spent quite a bit of time racking my brain on like how do I want the Venator to look as a Starfleet ship? How are we gonna pull that off? And eventually, just one day, it just kind of came to me when I wasn't even thinking about it. It's just like, boom, that would be a great idea. And then I finally talked to Aventine. They managed to pull the thing together even better than how I had it in my head, which is generally how it works with when working with Aventine. They do such an amazing job at just bringing my crazy ideas into full life images, and it's just it's so cool. I love seeing this, and it's always so much fun when I get the chance to do this kind of stuff with them. But yeah, let me know what you guys think down below in the comments, and down in the pinned comment I will leave Aventine's Blue Sky page so you can go check out more of their art. I highly recommend you follow them. They do some amazing stuff, which you can see here already is just awesome. But they have a lot of other really great art too that you should go check out. So yeah, link to them in the pinned comment. And while you're down there, like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. If you'd like to further support the channel, hit that join button to become a member. Check out the other affiliate links in the pinned comment. Check out the merch store. If you're ever shopping on the Epic Game Store, be sure to use my content creator code STU1701. Any of these really help me out, and they allow me to continue to do cool things like commission artists to make cool stuff like this for me to make content on. So if you want to see more of that stuff, do all that stuff. or just keep watching the videos. That really helps too, and I really do appreciate it. Either way though, thank you so much for watching. My name's Stu, and I will see you guys next time.